Elon Musk's AI tool, Grok, will no longer be able to edit photos of real people in order to digitally undress them in places where it's illegal to do so. The tool is used on the social media platform X, and there's been widespread concern about fake photos of people in revealing clothing.
What if the Bible isn't just a book, but a code? When Grok AI, one of the most advanced intelligences ever built, analyzed the most printed and debated text in human history, it wasn't searching for faith or flaws. It was searching for patterns. And what it found was neither random nor easily explained. Mathematical symmetry, recursive structures, and numerical signatures woven seamlessly across 66 books written over 15 centuries. Could humans really have hidden such precision without the tools we have today? Or is there something deeper at work, a design encoded beyond ordinary perception? Patterns so precise they challenge coincidence, yet so intricate they raise even harder questions about intention. And this isn't about belief versus skepticism. It's about what happens when Grok AI reads scripture and uncovers something no one expected to see. How the machine reads. Before we look at what the AI found, we need to understand what the AI is and how it reads. Because this is not a human being sitting in a library with a highlighter.
The collection at the British Library includes one of the world's greatest books.
This is something fundamentally different, and that difference is not a limitation. That is the entire point. In February 2025, Elon Musk's AI platform Grok made international headlines when users began prompting it to analyze the Bible. The results went viral almost overnight. Grok identified structural patterns, numerical regularities, and cross-book consistencies that stunned both believers and skeptics. Social media erupted. Clips were shared millions of times. Pastors quoted the AI from the pulpit, as atheists debated it in comment sections. Within weeks, other platforms followed. OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude were all being fed the same question: what do you see in this text that we have missed? But the phenomenon did not begin with Grok. It began decades earlier in quieter rooms.
Intelligence tool Grok to digitally undress people
with less dramatic tools. In 1994, Israeli mathematician Eliyahu Rips and physicist Doron Witztum published a paper in the peer-reviewed journal Statistical Science claiming that the Hebrew text of the Torah contained hidden codes, names and dates embedded at equidistant letter intervals that could not be explained by chance. The paper ignited a firestorm. Mathematician Brendan Mackay of the Australian National University challenged the findings. The debate consumed academic conferences for years, but what it proved, regardless of which side you took, was that the Bible's mathematical properties were real enough to fight about. The text was not merely literature, it was data, and data, unlike theology, can be measured. What modern AI brings to this investigation is something Rips and Mackay could not have imagined: scale. A human scholar processes the Bible linearly. You read a verse, you read a chapter. You might compare 2 or 3 passages if a concordance directs your attention. Even the most dedicated researcher working an entire career can hold perhaps a few thousand cross-references in active memory. The Bible contains over 31,000 verses. The combinatorial space of possible relationships between those verses, the patterns, the echoes, the inversions, the structural parallels, is astronomical. No human can search that space. It is not a question of intelligence. It is a question of architecture. The human brain was simply not built for that kind of processing. And I can hold the entire text in working memory simultaneously. Every verse, every word, every letter, every numerical value assigned to every character in the original Hebrew and Greek. It can scan for patterns across any axis: thematic, linguistic, numerical, structural, phonetic, positional, and test millions of hypotheses per second, discarding those that fail statistical significance. It can identify a relationship between a verse in Genesis and a verse in Revelation that no human reader would ever think to compare, because the connection is not thematic or narrative. It is mathematical. And the machine does not care whether the connection is theologically convenient. It only reports what it finds. And the methodologies vary by platform, but the core toolkit has become consistent. Natural language processing analyzes grammatical structures of the original languages. Recurring sentence architectures, verb tense patterns, shifts in narrative voice across books written centuries apart. Statistical frequency analysis measures whether specific words or numerical values appear at rates that deviate from random distribution. Gematria, the ancient practice of assigning numerical values to Hebrew letters, called isopsy in Greek, is applied computationally at scales no human mathematician could replicate. Structural analysis maps large-scale organization, chiastic patterns arranged in mirror symmetry around a central pivot, inclusion structures where a passage begins and ends with the same phrase, and macro chiasms spanning hundreds of chapters. Then think of it this way. For 2,000 years, scholars have studied the Bible the way you study a painting in a museum, standing in front of it, examining the brushstrokes, debating the composition. What AI does is take an X-ray of the canvas. It looks past the image and into the structure beneath. It does not care about the beauty of the painting. It cares about the geometry of the frame, the chemistry of the pigment, the mathematical relationships between every stroke. And sometimes, when you X-ray a masterpiece,
social media platform X over concerns about its AI tool Grok.
You find a second painting underneath, one the artist concealed or one that was always there and no one had the instruments to see. The critical point is this: the AI is not interpreting. It is not deciding what the text means. It has no opinion on whether Jesus rose from the dead or whether Moses parted the Red Sea. It is measuring what the text does, reporting the mathematical and structural properties of the language with the same cold objectivity a spectrometer brings to analyzing starlight. And when a spectrometer tells you that a star 400 light-years away is made of hydrogen, you do not argue with the spectrometer. You ask how the hydrogen got there. What the machine found. The first finding was the one that made the headlines, and it is the one that remains the most difficult to explain away. The number 7. 7 is, of course, prominent on the surface of the Bible. God rests on the seventh day. There are 7 churches in Revelation, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls of wrath. Naaman dips in the Jordan 7 times. Joshua marches around Jericho for 7 days. The number appears hundreds of times in explicit references. And this is well known and unremarkable. Any religious tradition assigns symbolic weight to certain numbers. What the AI found is different. It found the number 7 operating beneath the text, at a structural level invisible to the naked eye. Consider the opening verse of the Bible in the original Hebrew. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In Hebrew, this sentence contains exactly 7 words. Those 7 words are composed of exactly 28 letters, which is 7 times 4. The Gematria value of the 3 nouns in the sentence, God, heavens, earth, totals a number divisible by 7. The Gematria value of the verb created is divisible by 7. The value of the first and last letters of every word, summed together, is divisible by 7. The value of the first and last letters of the entire sentence, that taken alone, is divisible by 7. One verse. Multiple independent numerical properties, all divisible by 7. The probability of this occurring by chance in a single sentence of this length has been calculated by mathematicians at roughly 1 in several billion. But it is not one verse. The AI found this sevenfold signature repeating across the entire text, in the genealogies of Genesis, in the structure of the Psalms, in the arrangement of the Gospels, in the architecture of Revelation. Not every verse, not randomly, but at structurally significant points, openings, closings, pivots, thematic keystones. The sevenfold watermark appears where the text is doing something important, as though the mathematical signature is marking, flagging, the load-bearing walls of the literary architecture. The AI also detected what researchers have termed Fibonacci adjacency.
In terms of applications, Fibonacci numbers appear in nature surprisingly often.
Instances where the Fibonacci sequence, the mathematical pattern that governs the spiral of a nautilus shell and the branching of a tree, appears to inform the numerical structure of the text. The number of psalms, the arrangement of genealogical generations, the chapter divisions of certain prophetic books. These are not exact Fibonacci numbers in every case, but they cluster around Fibonacci values at a rate that significantly exceeds chance, as though the text is not merely written in language but scored in mathematics, the same mathematics that governs organic growth in the natural world. To grasp why this matters, consider what Gematria actually is. In ancient Hebrew, there was no separate number system. At each letter of the alphabet doubled as a numeral. Aleph was 1, Bet was 2, Gimel was 3, and so on through the hundreds. Every word, therefore, had a numerical value, the sum of its letters. The word for life, Chai, equals 18. The word for truth, Emet, equals 441. This was not a mystical imposition. It was how the language worked. Numbers and letters were the same system. And what the AI discovered is that this dual nature of Hebrew was not incidental to the composition of Scripture. It was exploited with a precision and consistency that suggests either superhuman coordination or something we do not yet have a name for. The Greek New Testament exhibits its own version of this phenomenon through isopsy, the Greek equivalent of Gematria. And when the AI analyzed the numerical values of key theological terms across the Gospels and Epistles, it found that terms central to the text's message, words like truth, grace, cross, and resurrection, cluster around values divisible by 7 and by multiples of other structurally significant numbers. The clustering is not absolute. It is not every word, but it occurs at a frequency that the AI, testing against randomized Greek corpora of equivalent length and vocabulary, flagged as statistically significant. The text is behaving at the numerical level as though it were composed with a calculator by authors who did not have calculators. The numerical patterns were striking, but the structural patterns were in some ways more astonishing. The chiastic structure, a literary form in which elements are arranged in an ABCB prime, a prime mirror pattern around a central pivot, has been recognized in biblical texts for over a century. Individual psalms are chiastic. Individual speeches of Jesus contain chiastic inversions. This is well documented. What the AI revealed is that chiastic structure operates at scales far beyond anything previously suspected. Entire books of the Bible are organized as single, massive chiasms. The Gospel of Matthew, the AI demonstrated, is arranged as a chiastic structure spanning 28 chapters, with the Transfiguration narrative at its center, the exact structural midpoint of the entire Gospel. The book of Genesis mirrors Revelation in dozens of specific, measurable ways. The tree of life appears in both the opening and closing books. And the curse pronounced in Genesis 3 is explicitly reversed in Revelation 22. The river that flows out of Eden parallels the river that flows from the throne of God. The Bible, read as a single unified text, exhibits a mirror symmetry that spans its entire length, from the first chapter of the first book to the last chapter of the last book. This is where the finding becomes genuinely difficult to account for. Genesis was composed, by the most conservative scholarly estimates, over 1,000 years before Revelation. The authors of these books did not collaborate. They did not share a literary plan. They wrote in different languages, in different centuries, for different audiences. And yet the texts they produced locked together like the two halves of a cipher key. The AI did not conclude that this proves divine authorship. The artificial intelligence does not make theological claims, but it did measure the probability of this degree of structural coherence arising from 40 independent authors writing across 15 centuries without coordination. The number it produced was not 0, but it was a number with a great many zeros after the decimal point. No discussion of AI and biblical analysis is complete without addressing the most controversial claim in the field, the Bible code. The concept, popularized in the 1990s by journalist Michael Drosnin, but based on earlier mathematical work by Israeli researcher Eliyahu Rips, holds that the Hebrew text of the Torah contains hidden messages encoded as equidistant letter sequences, or ELS. Skip every 50th letter, for example, and a word emerges. Skip every 7th, and another appears. Rips and his colleagues published a paper in the peer-reviewed journal Statistical Science, claiming that the names of prominent rabbis appeared encoded in Genesis at skip distances that could not be attributed to chance. The controversy was immediate and intense. Other mathematicians challenged the methodology. Brendan Mackay of the Australian National University demonstrated that similar patterns could be found in Moby Dick and War and Peace, arguing that ELS codes are a statistical artifact, the inevitable result of searching a sufficiently large text for a sufficiently flexible set of patterns. When modern AI revisited the question, it brought a level of rigor that neither side of the original debate possessed. The machine tested ELS patterns in the Hebrew Bible against dozens of control texts of similar length and linguistic complexity. It controlled for the statistical biases that Mackay had identified, and it reported a finding that satisfied neither the code believers nor the code skeptics completely. The AI found that ELS patterns in the Torah do occur at a rate slightly but measurably above what control texts produce, a finding consistent with some form of non-random structure in the letter arrangement. But the effect size was far smaller than the original RIP study claimed, and far too modest to support the dramatic predictions, assassinations, earthquakes, political events that Drosnin had extracted from the text. The truth, as the AI presented it, was characteristically unsatisfying to extremists on either side. There is something there, but it is not what you think it is. The text carries faint mathematical traces of an ordering principle that exceeds randomness. But those traces do not form a crystal ball. They form a watermark. The reactions and the limits. The response to these findings has been predictable in its polarization and surprising in its intensity. For many believers, the AI's findings constitute vindication, technological confirmation of what faith has always maintained. If the mathematical structure of the Bible exceeds what human authorship can account for, then the text must have a superhuman author. The argument is simple, emotionally powerful, and has spread rapidly through religious media. Pastors have preached sermons citing the sevenfold numerical patterns. On YouTube channels with millions of subscribers have presented the AI's findings as proof of God's fingerprint in Scripture. The phrase "God code" has entered popular vocabulary. For skeptics, the reaction has been equally forceful. The mathematical patterns, they argue, are artifacts of cherry-picking, the result of searching a large text for any pattern at all and then declaring the ones you find to be significant. Gematria, in this view, is numerological pseudoscience dressed in computational clothing. The structural parallels between Genesis and Revelation can be explained by the final editors of the biblical canon deliberately selecting and arranging books to create thematic coherence, a process of human curation, not divine engineering. And the chiastic structures, while real, yet reflect a common literary convention of the ancient Near East, not a supernatural signature. Both reactions in their way are acts of translation, taking the AI's raw mathematical output and converting it into a language that supports a pre-existing worldview. The believers translate the numbers into theology. The skeptics translate the numbers into statistics. Neither is wrong exactly, but neither is engaging with the full weight of what the AI actually reported. The cultural reverberations have extended far beyond churches and university departments. Online communities have fractured along predictable lines. On one side, forums dedicated to faith and prophecy have absorbed the AI's findings into existing frameworks of end-times expectation and divine confirmation, sometimes distorting the original research beyond recognition. On the other, rationalist and atheist communities have mounted detailed technical rebuttals, some rigorous, some dismissive, arguing that the entire enterprise of computational biblical analysis is sophisticated numerology. Media coverage has oscillated between breathless credulity and reflexive scorn, with very little inhabiting the difficult middle ground where the actual findings live. The uncomfortable truth is that the data is genuinely ambiguous. It resists recruitment by either side. And in a culture addicted to certainty, ambiguity is the one thing no one wants to hear. Because the AI did not say, God wrote this, and it did not say, humans wrote this and the patterns are meaningless. What it said, to the extent that a machine can be said to say anything, is that the text exhibits structural properties that are statistically anomalous, that the degree of mathematical order in the Bible exceeds what would be expected from uncoordinated human authorship, and that the specific nature of that order, its consistency, its recursiveness, its operation across centuries of composition, is not adequately explained by any existing model, sacred or secular. That is a harder finding to live with than either God is real or God is not real. It is the finding that says, something is here that we do not yet have the framework to understand. Intellectual honesty requires acknowledging what the AI cannot do. And what it may be getting wrong. First, translation. The mathematical analyses depend on the original Hebrew and Greek texts, but we do not possess the original manuscripts of any biblical book. What we have are copies of copies, thousands of manuscripts that differ from one another in small but sometimes significant ways. Textual critics have spent centuries reconstructing the most probable original readings, but certainty is impossible. The AI is analyzing a reconstructed text, not an autograph. If a scribe changed a letter in the 3rd century, a numerical pattern that depends on that letter may be an artifact of transmission, not composition. Second, selection bias. The Bible is not one book. It is a curated anthology. The 66 books of the Protestant canon were selected from a larger pool of texts over centuries of debate. If the selection process was guided, consciously or unconsciously, by aesthetic or structural criteria, then some of the mathematical coherence the AI detects may reflect the taste of the editors, not the intention of the authors. The question is whether editorial selection alone can account for the depth and precision of the patterns found. The AI suggests it cannot. But the AI's suggestion is a probability, not a proof. Third, and most fundamentally, AI does not understand meaning. It processes symbols. It measures relationships between tokens. It can tell you that a pattern exists with a given probability, but it cannot tell you what the pattern means, whether it is a divine signature, a cultural artifact.
I think every believer can benefit from understanding the original beautiful meaning of 5 or 10 or 15 biblical words that are central to our faith.
A product of the deep structure of the Hebrew language, or something entirely outside our current categories. The machine reads the text with perfect precision and zero comprehension. It sees the skeleton, but not the soul. This limitation is not a flaw. It is a feature. It means the AI's findings are genuinely pre-interpretive. They sit upstream of theology and upstream of skepticism in a space where the data has not yet been converted into a story. And that is precisely what makes them so valuable and so uncomfortable. Because we are a species that lives in stories. Raw data without narrative is almost intolerable to us. And the AI has produced data that does not fit neatly into any existing narrative. The machine has read the book, traced the patterns, measured the signal, but it cannot tell us who or what set them there. We are left with the question, are sharp and unyielding? If an intelligence can detect order that surpasses our understanding, what does that make us? And what does it mean for the stories we thought we knew? The text sits before us, ancient yet newly strange, its secrets exposed in cold numbers yet still beyond reach, daring us to follow where the evidence leads. Each pattern, each symmetry, hints at a design that may be human, divine, or something entirely different, something our minds are not yet equipped to categorize. The more we measure, the more the mystery deepens, as if the book itself is aware of our scrutiny, revealing truths in fragments, teasing us with glimpses we can feel but cannot fully grasp. The story is far from over. The next revelation may be waiting in the spaces we've not yet dared to look, in the gaps between letters, or in the structures that span centuries, or in the intelligence, artificial or otherwise, that has first brought them into the light. And when we follow that trail, we may find that what we thought was a text is something much more, a signal, a question, or a doorway into understanding that has always been just beyond our reach.